little bit about CoQ10, coenzyme Q10. That's also very important for mitochondrial function. Again, mitochondria are the energy powerhouses of the cell. Other things that are important too. We also talk about a variety of other nutrients that are important for mitochondrial function, like benfotiamine. Now, benfotiamine is really a type of B vitamin, if you will. And it's also been shown to be very helpful when people have the phenomenon known as glycation going on. So there are lots of things people can do, but in order to know what's best for you, it's important to really talk to a qualified health professional. People can talk to one of our health advisors. I think the idea of an individualized approach to health really is very, very important. Again, we're all human beings, but we all have unique biochemical differences. And in order to really know what's best for you, it's important to talk to somebody knowledgeable in this area. And then, of course, also get periodic blood testing done. It's amazing. We can find things. You can understand things that are going on in your body. And it's very important, quite frankly, that if you find something early, it's much easier to deal with it than if you find it late. So we really support the idea of at least annually getting a complete blood panel, blood test profile done to try to identify any issues that might be occurring early on. Again, it's much easier to quell something in the early stages than to wait until something has really had an opportunity to take hold. The latter is not an optimal way to approach things.
One of the things I really thought was interesting about having blood work done through the foundation is that the criteria for things is different. For example, because of the massive amounts of money spent on research and studies and double-blind studies, when you look at your levels for hormones or you look at your levels for things, you have a different, almost schematic. You have an advanced criteria. You're not looking at what the FDA said we should take, what amount of E we should take, or how much vitamin D we should take. If we were taking how much vitamin D we were told to take as kids, we would be starving of vitamin D or vitamin D3, for example. So what's interesting is not only that you provide the testing and a qualified health professional, but that the criteria for looking at what is good health in your organization is up-leveled.
I'm glad you raised that point. One thing that
I really want you to talk about that because I found that extremely startling, that the hormone panels, the other panels for looking at what is the health barometer are different than just going to a traditional doctor.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you raised that, and it gets to me a core point that we make often, and that is what is normal isn't necessarily optimal. And I think it's a very important concept for people to understand. Just because, for example, one's free testosterone level is in a quote-unquote normal range, that doesn't necessarily mean it's optimal. Not only optimal from a population standpoint for that person as well. An example that I often use is if you went back 50 years and you looked at, let's say it's 1960, we're going to go back in time with our time machine. If you go back to 1960, what was considered normal from a cholesterol standpoint, these days people would be alarmed. And yet, if you went in to see your primary care physician in 1960 and you had a total cholesterol of, let's say, 270, 280, your primary care physician would probably look at you and he'd say,
probably call an ambulance.
or would look at you and say, well, this is fine, there's nothing to worry about there. And again, the key thing here is that optimal is very different than a so-called normal range, which is usually based upon population data. And as another example, we know that the population in the United States, for example, there are epidemic levels of obesity. Something else that I'm passionate about, which is We really have to do something to address this health catastrophe that is facing us over the next 20 to 30 years, particularly with kids. We know that...
Isn't that from the food, Doctor? Isn't that really from the food and impure water and the fake food that they're eating?
Well, I think it's due to a variety of factors. You're correct. One is this preponderance of high-calorie, nutrient-poor food. Another aspect of this is physical activity levels. Many schools, for budgetary reasons, have cut physical education programs. Kids, when we were kids, we went home, you went outside, or you went down and you played basketball. You did something, you were physically active. Kids these days will come in the house typically and they'll play on the computer. So there are physical factors involved, there are dietary factors, there are just a constellation of issues that are unfortunately resulting in the population being by and large overweight. 3 out of every 5 people are either overweight or obese. And as another example, we're seeing epidemic rates of type 2 diabetes in kids. Now, traditionally, you never saw type 2 or so-called adult-onset diabetes until folks were adults. But we're seeing teenagers, 16, 17-year-olds. And I'm not talking about type 1 diabetes. I'm talking about type 2.
What's the distinction?
And inevitably, well, one of the distinctions, or the distinction is, with type 1, it's viewed as an autoimmune disease. Essentially, your body attacks your pancreas and it destroys the insulin-producing beta cells in the pancreas. With type 2 diabetes, it's characterized by insulin resistance, meaning at the target organ, in the liver, in the muscle cell, even in the fat cell, there's resistance to the effects of insulin. And by and large, this is due to being, guess what, overweight and physically inactive. We know that something around 85% of folks who develop type 2 diabetes are either overweight or obese. And I'll couple that with physical inactivity, and it's quite the recipe for developing metabolic problems.
Going back to the matrix, the vitamin D levels that you've been publishing and writing about are startling for vitamin D3. Can you explain that to the public? This is huge.
Sure. Vitamin D is something we're really passionate about. One of the things we know is that the recommendations for many, many years as to what is a so-called optimal level of vitamin D were really woefully inadequate. And what we know from doing research, from interacting with thought leaders such as John Cannell, who's a physician, who's president of the Vitamin D Council, we know that for many, many people, their vitamin D levels in their blood, in their serum, are inadequate. Now, we talk about different levels. What we look at is what's an optimal level of 25-hydroxy-D, and it's probably somewhere between 50 and 60 nanograms per milliliter. It may actually be a little bit more than that. However, what's startling is that the vast majority of folks, not only are life extension members, but people in the general public aren't anywhere close to that range.
And they're taking how many units a day? 5,000 units of D3?
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is it is somewhat individualized. But a basic rule of thumb is that for every 1,000 IU of vitamin D3, also known as cholecalciferol, that 1,000 IU daily ingested will raise one's 25-hydroxy vitamin D level in their blood by about 10 nanograms per ml. So what that suggests is that in order to be up in the normal or the normal range, you need to be at least above 30. So we think having at least 2,000 IU of D3 daily is necessary to get up into at least beyond the deficiency range, which is anywhere under or south of 30 nanograms per milliliter. But in order to get into the optimal range, we know that people need more than 2,000 IU of D3.
That was so startling to me.
There's something else, too. We actually did an analysis of our life extension members who typically are much, much healthier than the general population. And it was remarkable to us. I actually did the analysis, and what the analysis showed was that amazingly, about 85% of the tests were under 50 nanograms per milliliter. And again, it's amazing because these are people who are proactive